Who innovates matters. The more diverse teams are, the more innovative and the more effective they will be. This is old news, but the world is doing nowhere near enough. By failing to make inclusion key to innovation, we fail to help people to solve immediate problems that they understand better than anyone. We miss opportunities that could grow into exciting new businesses and business models. We fail to focus on some of the most pressing problems faced by the most marginalized groups, and even, unintentionally, build things that seriously harm people that we are aiming to help. So, to look a bit closer, let's try a quick experiment. Take a moment to picture a school you went to. Does this remind you of your childhood school? What about this one? Or this one? They're all schools, even if they don't look familiar. But hundreds of thousands of children around the world learn in places like these. UNICEF and partners are mapping schools globally with the aim of giving every child a modern education. Assumptions about what a school looks like are crucial, because when we used award-winning machine learning algorithms trained to identify structures from satellite imagery, the accuracy changed by location. Most of the training images for the algorithms were from North America and Western Europe, giving around a 60% accuracy. But in Colombia and elsewhere, the accuracy dropped to just 10%. Schools in parts of Colombia look a lot different to schools in Canada, Croatia, or California. So the algorithms that existed ended up missing or misclassifying the schools that many children attend. We face the same problem when trying to map health facilities. AI engineers can do so much more to consider how their context affects their assumptions. They could start by asking, what if all schools don't look like mine? Team leaders and hiring managers can hire with more global, inclusive views, and in the end, the results will be far better. In short, diversity boosts impact and relevance in our globalized world. It's important to emphasize the value of diverse training data and materials for the algorithms that increasingly shape our lives, from healthcare and education to policing and surveillance, whether we live in developed or developing nations. As we've heard, training samples and data sets are typically collected in the rich world, or in the case of image sets for facial recognition, for example, from white people in the West. All this leads to inaccuracies and bias, which at worst can put Black lives in mortal danger, or at best perpetuate inequalities. Diverse teams with diverse perspectives are part of the solution, along with principles and rigorous tools used regularly to identify, check, and mitigate biases. Algorithmic equity is possible, and inspiring leaders like Joy Blomwini, founder of the Algorithmic Justice League, are working hard to ensure that technology serves all of us, not just the privileged few. We should never stop being conscious that who innovates matters. Whether you define diversity by gender, race, or geography, the lack of diversity in AI is so extreme that it can't be characterized as a gap, but rather as a canyon. Just 22% of AI jobs are held by women, with even less in senior roles. In research, women make up 15% at Facebook, 14% of AI paper authors, and 12% of leading machine learning researchers, and just 10% of AI research staff at Google. Zooming out for a broader view of the technology sector, the most recent diversity and inclusion reports show women made up 37% staff at Facebook, 32% at Google, and 29% at Microsoft. Their racial diversity mirrors that of the sector at large, with people of color significantly underrepresented. So whether it's mapping schools or any innovative ideas with big potential real-life impact, a lack of diversity in innovation makes for bigger risks for everyone. Will your preschooler be misidentified and excluded from important services because biometric technology, largely designed to work with adults, is being used on young children with lack of verifiable performance data and adequate research, as our own study shows? Will you lose out on a job because an algorithm preferred male candidates over female? Amazon had to discontinue a recruitment system trained with data gathered over a 10-year period that came from mostly male candidates. Will your child get grades that fairly and accurately reflect their ability and educational achievement? The British government had to abandon an algorithm that adjusted hundreds of thousands of students' grades in an apparently discriminatory way. Will you be arrested unfairly by faulty facial recognition, as Americans of color are? Will you be irritated when Facebook inaccurately tags you in photos, especially if you are a woman or a person of color? Or will you be compensated for a violation of your privacy in a $500 billion lawsuit against Instagram? Will you be entertained, turned off, or radicalized by YouTube's algorithms that aim to keep your eyes watching? Will a person or an algorithm be less biased in deciding whether to give you a loan as financial institutions increasingly apply AI? Whether any of these applications will help or hurt you is significantly dependent on who you are and whether diversity was intrinsic or ignored when the application was created. Who innovates matters. Tal Whitney, a pioneer in diversity and inclusion in computer science, captures the cost to all of us perfectly. Diversity drives innovation. When we limit who can contribute, we in turn limit the problems that we can solve. But just what sorts of problems get solved when you open pathways for a truly diverse group of scientists? That's exactly why we catalyzed biotechnologists across Africa to solve problems facing women and children. The team is female-led and made up of almost 50% of female researchers. This is an unusually high proportion, as women worldwide pursuing careers in science make up only 28% according to UNESCO. Numerous studies have found that women in STEM fields publish less, are paid less for their research, and do not progress as far as men in their careers. And there are even fewer scientists of any gender that are people of color or from the developing world. The diversity of our biotech research team has led to breakthroughs in unexpected and life-saving areas. Game-changing biosensors that are less expensive and more resilient to high temperatures and humidity, which hamper the transportation and storage of traditional disease testing tools. Thanks to their research, in the future, there will be malaria tests that can tell the difference between co-occurring strains, HIV diagnostics that can monitor drug resistance, and women outside the world's richest countries will have access to smarter pregnancy tests that flag high-risk conditions. Kansile Buthelezi is right. Anyone can be a scientist, and everyone can be an innovator given the opportunity. During emergencies, UNICEF uses multi-purpose tents for schools, health clinics, distribution points, and child-friendly spaces. When we could not find a solution in the market for a new high-performance tent, we drove the product development through an inclusive innovation process that gathered 1,000 criteria from a diversity of sources and involved both industry and experts on the ground. Prototypes were developed and tested in labs and in wind tunnels. They were also tested by people who will be using them to be certain they could perform well in different climates and contexts, from Uganda for hot and dry climates, in the Philippines for wet and humid conditions, and in Afghanistan for the cold. As a result, the new tents are not only a step change improvement, they also include innovations like durable anchoring systems, smaller bags to make it easier to get to harder to reach locations, and add-ons for electricity and solar kits. Too often, innovation efforts fail to recognize that people are the experts in their own context and can be the most powerful architects of solutions to opportunities around them. That is just as true for young people. It's why we've invested in reaching more than 14 million young people in 40 countries. Building their social innovation and entrepreneurship skills is an investment in our collective future. By putting skills, resources, and opportunities into the hands of young people, we nurture their metamorphosis from problem owners to perpetual problem solvers. In Zimbabwe, well before remote learning was the norm, Team Amigo developed an app to give every Zimbabwean equal access to textbooks and study tools. In North Macedonia, Team Bionic invented a 3D printed bionic arm for people who are missing an upper limb. Their product is 28 times cheaper than any other bionic arms currently available. In Thailand, Fantastic Four are building a web portal to help young people transition from detention to decent work. And in South Africa, students invented and are commercializing a light, rugged medical testing kit in a box, so medical tests can reach remote communities and offer on-the-spot rapid testing for COVID-19, HIV, influenza, and other diseases. So talent is universal, but opportunity is not. We are doing nowhere near enough to work with, learn from, and reap the rewards that spring from a more diverse and inclusive world of innovators. And we're doing nowhere near enough to mitigate the risks faced by vulnerable and marginalized populations presented by innovations that don't include them. The 2019 Forbes list of America's 100 most innovative leaders reflects this. There was just one solitary female and 10 people of color, not one of them black. But through the inspiration and Herculean efforts from activists, forward-looking thought leaders, and diverse innovators around the world, we are now seeing a shift in consciousness and a practical pushback from communities. I'm confident that tomorrow's innovators will be increasingly and inspiringly diverse. And as a result, the rewards from groundbreaking new tech, tools, and innovations will benefit all of us, wherever we live, whatever our gender, color, or age, whatever our abilities, and whoever we love, for a better future for everyone. Who innovates matters. Thank you.